Good evening. My name is John H., and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar, we're going to go through the recovery section of the Big Book line by line. We are going to take the action that our founders and the first 100 people who recovered say that we must do to overcome this seemingly hopeless condition of mind and body. Now, I don't claim to be any kind of a big book and 12-step guru or expert, not by any means. I am no kind of deep spiritual advisor. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple of recovered alcoholics reached out their hand to me and said, "We have a different way." Now, this is based on the Canadian method pioneered by the Golden Slippers, but I also borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes, from Chuck C., from Clancy, and from all of the giants upon whose shoulders we are riding. Now, I would love it if you could grab a couple of friends and listen to these sessions together, because working the steps with other people is always more powerful than trying to go through them alone. So you're going to need a large print big book, a highlighter, and a pen, and some willingness. And as you guys will see, we open every session with a set-aside prayer to more open our mind to be more receptive to this information. Thank you so much for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now dead, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before would be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been, in effect, left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Amen. All right, welcome everybody. So is there anybody that this is their first session? Right here. Okay, so let's give you one of these.
Okay, and I stole one of these.
Okay, you got one. There's another one in there you can give to a friend. So.
Oh, thanks.
And did anybody miss last week besides this gentleman? Everybody's got the doctor's opinion? Okay. Now, it's critical, when I discovered this, that we try to come to every session. My sponsor taught me that, John, he said, if you skip something in the first 164 pages, what if it's a thing that might save your life? Because I was sick and dying. So it's critical that we come to every session, but I realize that in today's day and age, you might not make it. So finally, with the help of somebody who's better on computers than me, I have posted, I think this was from 2 sessions ago. If you get onto YouTube, so get onto YouTube and then you type in Code Blue Big Book, okay? Then you're going to see 2 big books. You're going to see this fella, you're going to see another big book, and you're going to see my declaration about going to any length, right? So if you see that, you're in the right spot, and you'll be able to find any session. I've got them all. On there. So if you do have to miss it, please get on and make up the session and get your big book out do the highlighting and everything else. So last week, critical information, and I don't know why they moved that. I think it used to be on page 1, the doctor's opinion. Yeah, it used to be on page 1, and for some reason they moved it into the preface. That the information that we found in the doctor's opinion last week was vital to my recovery, because I didn't quite know what was wrong with me. All I knew is that I couldn't stop drinking, and once I started, I couldn't stop. So last week we discovered the problem, right? The physical allergy that ensures we cannot drink safely, right? We can't control what we take once we start to drink. And the obsession of the mind that ensures we can't stop drinking, right? So the ultimate conclusion that we discovered was that if you can't drink without getting drunk, and you can't keep from drinking, you're absolutely powerless over alcohol, and our lives are unmanageable. And if you don't think your life is unmanageable now, keep drinking, and you'll find out. It will be soon. Any good textbook is going to follow that up with a classic example, and that's what they did with Bill's story. It's the classic example of somebody who has the problem, right? And Bill learned early on the importance of sharing his story with another alcoholic. That's why they lead off with Bill's story. Dr. Bob and Bill Dotson, number 2 and number 3, can see their problem through Bill's story. So when he wrote the story, his hopes were that another alcoholic will identify with Bill's drinking, they'll see Bill recover, and then hopefully they're going to think to themselves, hey man, I can recover as well, right? Now, a lot of people are going to say, I don't identify with Bill Wilson at all. He was a stock speculator. He was a salesman. He was an older guy. He's a man. He lived a long time ago, and that's what I did. I always looked for the differences. I did that both in Bill's story, and I did it in these rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. By looking for the differences instead of the similarities, I could tell myself that you guys didn't have a solution for me, and I gave myself permission to go out and drink. Right? So what we want to do is we want to try to look at the similarities between Bill and ourselves, right? So we're going to look for the way Bill thinks. We're going to look for the way Bill acts. We're going to look for the way Bill drinks, right? And we can identify with why he drank, how he drank, and what it ended up doing to him. So we're going to look for the progression of his alcoholism. Then we're going to see how he recovered. Right? And then hopefully the whole idea of putting his story first is to let us know that, hey, if he recovered, we can recover as well. So let's go to page 1. And forgive me, I don't know if anybody in here is in sales, but I've worked the last 6 days in a row. We're trying to make plan in our division and just getting squeezed from the muckety-mucks up top, and we didn't make plan. So it's been kind of a hectic few last days for me. All right, so there we are. Okay, chapter 1, page 1. So at the top of the page, we're going to write 1917. 1917. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we knew young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned. And we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last. Highlight the next 3 lines. And in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and prejudices of my people concerning drink. So the story goes, Bill, they were getting ready to go overseas, and Bill was at somebody's house, and there was a party going on, and Bill was in the midst of a large group of people, standing in the corner feeling completely alone. Here he was, and I know that experience. You're in a group of people, but you feel loneliness. And he took a couple of drinks of alcohol, and all of a sudden, he could converse with people, and he felt that he was part of, for the first time in his life, he was part of what was going on out there instead of what was going on in his head, right, which was keeping him alone. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time, so next to that, let's write Bill's solution is alcohol, next to what we highlighted. Bill's solution is alcohol. In time, we sailed for over there. Highlight, I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. So just highlight that again. So again, next to that one, let's write just a small solution. So here we're seeing Bill use alcohol so he can converse with other people and be part of, and here he's using it to combat his loneliness. So he's discovering that alcohol is a solution to his problems. And somewhere in there, right, early 20s. Bill's in his early 20s. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. So a doggerel is a verse. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot, whether he dieth by musket or by pot. So we can write Thomas Thetcher. It's Thetcher. I always thought it was Thatcher, like Ebby Thatcher, but it's Thetcher. Thomas Thetcher, 1764, I believe was when he died, and that was on his tombstone. And when they're talking about dying by pot, that's how they used to drink alcohol. They'd fill up big clay pots and they'd drink it down. And this fella, he didn't get killed in war. He got killed because he was an alcoholic. He died, I believe, at age 26, fairly young. So what we're going to do in the next two paragraphs, one of the symptoms of this disease is our self-centeredness. So we're going to circle or highlight every I that we run across here as Bill's telling a story. So I'll kind of inflect my voice a little bit. Ominous warning which I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises which I would manage with the utmost assurance. I took a night law course and obtained employment as an investigator for a surety company. Now, a surety company is an insurance company. The drive for success was on. I'd prove myself to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Okay, let's highlight to the end of the paragraph. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. So next to that, my sponsor had me write BS. I don't know if any of you guys, you're drinking. I used to drink and do a lot of cocaine, and I'd write these wonderful things out, right? And I'd try to read them a couple days later, and they were nonsense. So we're going to keep on with the I's. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. So the maelstrom is it's a whirlpool that sucks you in. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that would one day turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. So next to that, I did my little phone translation, and that's about $15,000 to $17,000 today. So it's a little chunk of change. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that someday would have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. Okay, so we're going to stop with the I's there. This refers to a time, Bill's talking about a time in the 1920s when the stock market was on a roll. people were investing in the stock market at about a 10% margin. They would buy these stocks with 10% down. The stocks would go up. They'd sell them. They'd take their profits and they'd buy more. Everybody was making money hand over fist, right? And he had an idea that he wanted to go up and down. He said, look, sooner or later this bubble is going to burst, and I can go up and down the eastern seaboard and check out the 100 of the most popular companies, and we can make our decisions based on fact rather than speculation. You know, and all the people that he gave this idea to, they said, Bill, thanks, but no thanks. We're making plenty of money. We don't need to throw some your way. Thanks, there's the door. So Bill got angry, and he said, I'm going to go ahead and do that myself. You know, we alcoholics, we get an idea. We're going to go ahead and do it. We gave up our positions, and off we roared on a motorcycle. The sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference surface. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had had some success at speculation, so we had a little money. But once we worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. Won't keep you sober, but the farm was in Syracuse, New York. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street, underline Wall Street, and next to it we're going to write deity to Bill. Capitalized, right? Money was Bill's higher power. He thought if I succeed in business and I get lots of money, that's all that matters. That's what's going to say that I'm a good human being, right? That's what I want: money, a family, a big house. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. So when they got back from that trip up and down the eastern seaboard, Bill gave his reports to the money men on Wall Street, and they read them over, and they said, my God, this is great information, Bill. And they gave him a nice office, they hired him, and they gave him the expense account, and all of a sudden, Bill has got something here. He's never had anything. He grew up poor in Vermont, and all of a sudden, he's a big success. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. Underline those 3 words. That's Bill. That Bill had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Underline the sentence. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. So right now, drinking is not yet causing Bill tremendous problems, and he's still a success, but his drinking is starting to increase. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. Underline, I made a host of fair weather friends. Okay? So I know that, when I quit drinking and drugging, nobody called me because I didn't have anything for them. So I had a lot of fair weather friends too. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends, so remonstrances, that's a list of complaints is the definition. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. Just highlight lone wolf. So, they're saying, Bill, you're drinking too much. Bill, you're hurting Lois. Bill, you're doing that. Bill, you're doing that. And Bill is saying, the hell with you. I've got plenty of money, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity. Underline the next 2 lines. For loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes. Now, that little line there, I believe just about everything that Bill Wilson wrote, except for that one little line there, because Bill's got a book called As Bill Sees It, but Lois has got one called As Lois Remembers, and they're not quite the same when it comes to that. In 1929, I contracted Gulf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. So underline Walter Hagen, and at the bottom you can write 14 to 29 Gulf champ. So this guy was much bigger than Tiger Woods in his heyday. Champ from 14 to 29. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to roam around the exclusive course, which had inspired such awe in me as a lad. Highlight the next sentence. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. So, off to the left, let's write, looking good on outside, feeling bad on inside. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. Looking good on outside, feeling bad on inside. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. Abruptly, in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. So next to that you can write crash, Black Tuesday. Crash, Black Tuesday. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ32. It had been 52 that morning. So you can write drop 20 points. So imagine, they're buying their stocks on 10% margin. So you go out and you buy $1 million worth of stock for $100,000 and it loses half its value. You're $500,000 in the hole, right? People, they didn't just lose their money. They were in complete debt. I was finished and so were many friends. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. Highlight high finance, and again, off to the left, let's write money was higher power. Money was higher power. Bill capitalizes all of the words he uses for deity. Money was his higher power. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. So next to that, we're going to write liquid courage. Right? I just get out of jail and my car is wrecked and I'm fired and I stop by the bar. I get some booze in me. I'll say, I'll get it all back. I'll show them. Liquid courage. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. So the friend was Dick Johnson, not an alcoholic. Dick Johnson, not an alcoholic. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I had better go to Canada. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. But drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke. So we're going to write first big consequence. And he's had several up to this point, but we're going to put first big consequence. My generous friend had to let me go. I mean, a good friend of his. Bill, you're fired. This time we stayed broke. Highlight the next two lines. We went to live with my wife's parents. I found a job, then lost it as the result of a brawl with a taxi driver. So we can write consequence next to that. We're starting to pile up. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, Macy's, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. So Bill was drinking, he couldn't get sober, and he was going back to these places where he used to work, and they were saying, Bill, you're half drunk, you smell, you're disheveled. Bill, move along, we don't want you here anymore. Bill, please, get out of here, you're scaring the customers. Let's highlight the next 3 lines. Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3 got to be routine. So next to that, we're going to write crossing invisible line. right? There's no fun drinking. It's necessary just to get up and do stuff. And of course, they've got the reference to bathtub gin. You can write 20 to 32 was prohibition. 20 to 32 was prohibition, where they had to go to speakeasies and a lot of people made their own booze. 2 bottles a day and often 3 got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s. And I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. So if there's any drug addicts around in the room here, you can write "Pay Dope Man First." Right? I got to tell you, when I got my money, I had to pay my dealers off so that I could get more stuff. And that's what Bill did here. Pay Dope Man first. I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. So we're going to highlight to the end of the paragraph. This went on endlessly, and I began to awaken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler of gin, followed by a half-dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hopes. So the first part of that paragraph, right? Insanity, powerlessness, and the last couple of lines, we're going to write, self-will won't keep us sober. Self-will. Bill thought he could control it, and he did have some periods here and there where he was able not to drink, right? And his wife every time his wife said, "Oh, this time he's going to do it. This time he's going to do it." Gradually things got worse. Underline, the house was taken over by the mortgage holder. So we're going to write consequence again next to that. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Highlight this little sentence. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished. So in the little margin there, let's write drinking away opportunities. Drinking away opportunities. So that's a story in and of itself. The money men on Wall Street knew that Bill was really good at putting these kind of deals together. And they said, "Bill, we've got something going on here, and if you can get this deal put together, the buyers will make money, the sellers will make money, we're going to make money, and we're going to share that money with you. But Bill, if you drink, this is over. We're kicking you off the deal." And Bill said, "Don't you worry about that drinking stuff. I'm done with that." So Bill worked for a matter of months on this deal. A matter of months. And a few days prior to it being completed successfully, they were all sitting around in a hotel room in Newark. And they were passing around a bottle of moonshine. And that bottle of moonshine came to Bill. And Bill said, "Oh no, I'm not taking a drink." He almost got me there. And it went around and it went around the room and it came around to him again. And the guy next to Bill said, "Bill, you don't understand what this is. This is the best Applejack I've ever tasted. It's called Jersey Lightning." Without another thought of anything, Bill said, "I've never had Jersey Lightning." He took a big swallow. He triggered the allergy, couldn't stop drinking, blew the whole deal, right? So let's see what he says in the next sentence. I woke up. Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to highlight the next paragraph. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I thought I was through forever. Before then I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so I did. Next to that, we're going to write moment of clarity. Moment of clarity. And I want you to go at the second line down I want you to circle that one. He said, I saw I could not take so much as one drink. So he had a moment of clarity. And after my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so I did, let's write written in front of Bible. So they got out the family Bible. And Bill said, "This is it. I will never have another drink of alcohol. So help me God, made a big flourish, and he signed it, written in the front of the Bible. So let's see what happened. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. Let's underline that as well and put a little asterisk next to it. So Bill had a moment of clarity, and he realized that he couldn't even take one drink, and he thought he had it, right? But he didn't. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that. So again, next to that paragraph, let's write powerlessness. Or powerless, or powerlessness, whichever one you like. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed. Okay, we're going to circle the I's again. Some time passed, and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time, I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then, and I did. So we got those, and again, guess what? We're going to write powerlessness next to that paragraph. And above powerlessness, let's write self-knowledge again. Because Bill knew that if he took one drink, he was screwed. So he's got the self-knowledge of what he needs to do. And we're going to underline the next sentence. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. So off to the left, we're going to do another ask sponsee. And I want you guys to ask yourself, so ask sponsee, can you relate to that? So when we're going through this book with somebody with another sick and dying alcoholic, and we get to this, we're going to say, can you relate to that? When you wake up in the morning after you did it again, and you know that you've just collapsed your entire life again? Can you relate to that? The courage to do battle was not there. Highlight the next 4 lines. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I had a sense of impending doom. I mean, I tell you, the last years of my drinking and using, I knew that things were going to be horrible. I lived in a sense of impending calamity and doom. I hardly dared cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me that the market had gone to hell again. Well, so would I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that, so 2 bottles and oblivion. So next to that, we're going to write suicidal. So, you know, if you're sitting in this room or you're working with a sponsee and they've had a lot of ideas about suicide, that's quite common. I was there. I mean, I got to that point every time when I relapsed. And the last time I had a plan and I had the means to carry that plan out. So that's, you're not alone. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms. For mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Highlight, next sentence. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. So again, we're going to write suicidal again. So he's thinking, you know, this thing is so bad that if I kill myself, I'm going to stop suffering, and my poor wife Lois, I won't have to put her through this stuff that I've been doing to her over and over again. It's better for me and it's better for everybody if I just kill myself, you know. And then he said, wait a minute, you know, that's not right. There were flights from city to country and back. Next to that, write geographical cure. You know, and a lot of us say, It's this damn city. It's these people I'm drinking with. It's that girlfriend. It's that horrible boss that I've got, right? I mean, we always are looking for something other than ourselves, right? And if we can just get rid of that thing, we're going to be okay. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Poor Lois is getting dragged around. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Again, they're suicidal again. I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came with heavy sedative. Highlight the next 2 lines. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity, so did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking. I was 40 pounds underweight. So the sentence we highlighted up at the top there, right? Drinking for oblivion. Drinking for oblivion. And the only problem about drinking for oblivion is you wake up. A lot of us think we're going to, hey, man, I can drink myself to death perhaps. But, we usually wake up and we got to do it again. My brother-in-law is a physician. Okay, you can write Dr. Leonard Strong. Dr. Leonard Strong is his brother-in-law. And you can write summer of 33. Summer of 1933. My brother-in-law is a physician, Dr. Leonard Strong. And through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics. So off to the left, you can write Towns Hospital. Towns Hospital. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. So belladonna, you can write mushrooms, I guess. I mean, you could look it up. What they did is these mushrooms fooled the body into thinking there was alcohol in it to lessen the withdrawals. That's what they use Valium for today. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise help much. So hydrotherapy, that's an interesting one. They strap the alcoholic to a gurney and they wheel him into a big room with shower heads coming out of the walls, and they alternate hot and cold water. And they throw him in there for, 20, 30 minutes, maybe even an hour. And, it doesn't cure alcoholism, but you get a clean drunk out of it when you're done. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, underline, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. Underline that. And then next to it, we're going to write obsession/allergy. That's what we covered last week in the doctor's opinion. Dr. Silkworth had all these ideas, and we don't know if Bill was the first person that he told about the obsession and the allergy, but we know that Bill eventually was able to do something with that information. So for the first time, Bill, because everybody else, Bill, your willpower, you got no willpower, Bill. What's the matter with you? Bill, you've got the lowest morals of anybody I've ever seen. How can you do that to your wife? Bill, you're just plain old sinful. And that's what he's been hearing from everybody his whole life. And all of a sudden, he gets this information that he's sick. So let's highlight the next 3 lines. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. That's what I couldn't figure out. Because, when I was in college, I wouldn't go to class, I'd still get an A, I could go out and get any job, I could sell anybody to anybody anything, I could do all of these things, but I couldn't stop drinking, and I couldn't stop using, I couldn't figure it out. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. I love that. Goose hung high. When not using, we are among the most productive people that I've ever met, and the most intelligent. Any alcoholics I know. Certainly, I'm in sales. The alcoholics are certainly the best salesmen when they're not drinking. I went to town and regularly and even made a little money. Highlight. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge. Okay, so now Bill knows what's wrong with him. He discovered, Dr. Silkworth said, Bill, once you start drinking, your body craves more liquor and you cannot control how much you take. And the doctor also said, Bill, when you're not drinking, you become extremely restless, irritable, and discontent, and you start to go crazy until you can take that first drink again. And when you do take that drink, the allergy kicks in and you have to get drunk. So now Bill says, ho, I know what's the matter with me now. I'm going to be okay. Thank you for explaining that. But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. Underline, little sentence, after a time I returned to the hospital. So you can write second treatment. Second treatment. Back to the town's hospital, back to Dr. Silkworth. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed to me. My weary and despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failure during delirium tremens, or I would develop, highlight the next 3 lines, or I would develop a wet brain, perhaps within a year. She would soon have to give me over to the undertaker or the asylum. After asylum, you can write or jails or sobriety. Undertaker or the asylum or jails or sobriety. So basically what happened is, he's back in the hospital and they thought that he was passed out, and Dr. Silkworth was talking to Lois outside the door, and Lois said, Doctor, is there any hope for my husband? And the doctor said, Lois, I think he's one of the hopeless people that I see come through here. So pretty soon what's going to happen is he's going to develop wet brain, and you're going to have to turn him over to one of the nut houses or one of the asylums. He overheard him talking. They did not need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. So he's hoping for oblivion. It was a devastating blow to my pride, right? Highlight those top 2 lines. To my pride, I who had thought so well of myself and my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles. Just those 2 lines there. Was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness after all. What would I not give to make amends? But that was over now. So next to that paragraph to the left, write, lost all hope. Lost all hope. And then we're going to highlight the entire next little paragraph there. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. So you can write hit rock bottom to the left. And then after master, you can write step 1. No step 1 written in those days, but right here is where Bill took step 1, right? So he's in the hospital. If you or I are in the hospital, we're saying to ourselves, you know what? I get out of here, I had better go to AA because those people are going to be able to help me out. So here's Bill. He's all alone. He's in the hospital. He's got no place to go. He's, oh my God, when I get out of here, I am screwed. What am I going to do, right? The poor fella, how's he going to stay sober all by himself? Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me for a bit. Then came the insidious insanity of that first drink, and on Armistice Day, 1934, I was off again. Okay, so we call that Veterans Day. You can write November 11th, and we can highlight the next 1, 2, 3, 5 lines. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch. Okay, stop highlighting there. I was soon to be catapulted in what I like to call the 4th dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. So let's bracket that little part there and let's write promise of hope. Promise of hope. And, I saw a little film of Bill Wilson, and he said when he went out to 12-step people, the way he did it is he said, in this hand, I'm giving them hopelessness. You're going to die. You're probably going to die. But in the other hand, he's going to give them hope. And that's what he's doing right here. It's the end, and then boom. Look at that next statement. It's completely opposite. It's a paradox. This program is full of paradoxes all over the place. Near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen. And I got to tell you, he triggered the allergy and he couldn't stop drinking. That was, I'm sure it was pretty dark. I sat drinking in my kitchen with a certain satisfaction. I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next day. My wife was at work. I wondered whether I dared hide a full bottle of gin near the head of our bed. I would need it before daylight. So right next to that, you can write protecting supply. Right? We got to protect our supply, man. Bottles hidden all over the place. Bottles, drugs, whatever you got. And again, he started drinking November 11th. He triggered the allergy and he could not stop. My musing was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. He was sober. Circle that. He was sober. And we can write Ebby Thatcher. Ebby Thatcher. EBBYTHATCHER. Oxford Group. Oxford Group.